Welcome into the Wiltfong Whiparound with Steve Wiltfong. Today is Monday, March 3rd, and I am your host, Josh Newberg. Boy, do we have a lot to cover today because the dead period ended Sunday at midnight. So visits are back on, face-to-face contact is back on, and recruiting is back on. So you guys, make sure you're subscribed to the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube, On3 Recruits channel. Hit it, subscribe. All right. Let's get this thing started and bring in On3 national analyst Steve Wiltfong. There he is. Steve, let's talk some Michigan recruiting because the Wolverines are starting to load up at the most important position on their roster, offensive line. Speaking of that, were you shocked that Michigan went into the heart of the South and beat Bama and Florida for elite offensive lineman Bear McWhorter on Friday?
Not at all. This was a recruitment that was tight down the stretch, and that's why you didn't see any On3 RPMs in favor of Alabama, Florida, or Michigan. Those were three programs that he was talking to down the stretch. But there was a lot of confidence around Ann Arbor, particularly over the last 10 days. He announced for Michigan on Friday, one of their most coveted targets at the point of attack year in and year out. This is a position of emphasis for Michigan. It's one of the calling cards, if not the trademark of their football team. They look to hit big on the offensive line every cycle. They certainly did in 2025 with guys like Andrew Babalola and Ty Haywood. Bear McWhorter, the first commitment for Sharon Moore in Michigan at the point of attack on offense here in 2026. Sharon Moore is involved in all of Michigan's top recruitments now, but we know that he gives a little extra juice for those players at the point of attack.
Yeah, and let's keep this video to offensive line recruiting for Michigan. And we got to talk Jackson Cantwell because he's the number one offensive tackle. He's the number one player overall. And a couple months ago, I don't think Michigan was a real threat here. But as we stand today, Steve, Michigan's a legit threat to land Jackson Cantwell, huh?
No question. I think Michigan's a school that he was always intrigued by. He got a chance to visit them in December. Absolutely loved his experience on campus. He talks a lot of football, the intricacies of the position with Grant Newsome, Michigan's offensive line coach. He feels connected with Sharon Moore. He's going to go back to Michigan on March 22nd and watch the Wolverines practice. He's going on 3 spring practice visits. It's going to start with Miami. Then he's going to head back up to Ohio State and then hit Michigan, get a chance to watch the Wolverines practice, get a sense for how they develop their offensive line. And then he's already got his official visit locked in for June as well. You have a top 6 for Jackson Cantwell right now. You have Missouri in-state. You have Georgia, Oregon, Michigan, Ohio State, and Oregon. And I have a couple tiers there, even though all 6 of these programs are in play. I probably give the inch to Georgia right now. I know I've gone back and forth with Georgia and Oregon, but my latest conversations, I'm kind of feeling the Bulldogs there. But Oregon right there. Michigan, I got in the 3-hole, a legitimate dark horse with runway to really make a move for Jackson Cantwell. He's got 2 more visits coming to Ann Arbor. I think that Michigan's got all their ducks in a row from an NIL perspective. He loves the style of play in the Big Ten at Michigan. So this is a program that could really make a move with Jackson Cantwell over the next few months.
All right, well, let's talk to Michigan fans about the rest of that offensive line board. Who are the other top targets now?
Yeah, well, the first one that comes to mind, Josh, is Prosper, Texas, 4-star Zayden Krempin. He's already been to Michigan a couple times. He's going to be back on campus for a few days in March, beginning on March 17th. He also has his official visit to end the summer in Ann Arbor. He's looking at a few other programs, but Michigan's at or near the top of the list for Zayden Krempin. The state's number 2 recruit, top offensive lineman in Michigan, is Gregory Patrick. He's a 4-star Michigan State legacy recruit, but he could end up at Michigan, Michigan State, or Notre Dame. Penn State rounds out his top 4 right now. But I like the 3 Midwest schools. He was recently on Michigan's campus, Gregory Patrick. Marky Walbridge is an on 300 offensive lineman from Massachusetts. Sharon Moore in Michigan offered him in January of 2023. So they've been on him for quite a while. They're going to get an official visit this summer. They're one of the front runners for Marky Walbridge. They're in the battle for elite offensive tackle Felix Ojo from the Lone Star State. Texas is my on 3 RPM. Michigan, Ohio State, Notre Dame, some of the others he has a keen eye on. And then Carter Scruggs, a coveted offensive lineman, 4-star out of Virginia. Georgia's been making a move with Carter Scruggs, but I've always liked Penn State and Michigan's position. Michigan, one of his favorites. So Michigan, as they push for another top 10 recruiting class in 2026, offensive line is going to be a big part of it. Everyone we just mentioned is a 4-star or better on that list, and the Wolverines are in great position for each and every one of those prospects.
All right, let's talk some Miami Hurricane recruiting, because Mario Cristobal and that staff are wasting no time coming out of this dead period to get elite targets on campus. Today's Monday, the first day out of the dead period, and their camp starts for spring. So they're loading up. Let's talk about the 5-star wide receiver, the number 1 wide receiver in America. Tristan Keys is going to be on campus. We talk a lot about him on this channel. It seems like Tennessee might be out front right now. This thing's kind of wide open. Where do the Canes stand?
Well, we've kind of talked about it a couple times on Wiltfong Whiparound and mentioned Miami in passing as the program that he's always been high on. He is on campus with his parents. He is staying overnight. This visit's going to go into Tuesday. Tristan Keys is the number 3 overall player in the country. He might be number 1 overall on Mario Cristobal and Miami's board. Wide receiver continues to be a point of emphasis for this staff as they try and remain the number 1 offense in college football. Tristan Keys, Alabama, Tennessee, Texas A&M are 3 others I know he's high on. You got LSU, Michigan, Ole Miss, Auburn, Texas also involved. So the list is long, but I think Miami is a program that he has a great deal of intrigue with, likes Kevin Beard, the offense, and he's on campus for a couple of days this week. I think returns are going to come in strong for Miami and Tristan Keys.
All right, good intel there. Also, a pair of on 300 DBs from the state of Georgia, Dorian Barney, top 20 player at his position. Also, safety Blake Stewart are in Coral Gables today. What do you got on them?
Well, Dorian Barney's been trending towards Texas A&M, but he's also got Georgia, Florida, Florida State, Ole Miss, Ohio State, some others in the mix. He was excited to get to Miami and get around the coaching staff and watch them prepare for spring camp. And he was really excited to see spring practice. Colorado's another program really pushing for Dorian Barney right now, but Miami seems to be in that lead group for him. Blake Stewart's a 4-star safety from Woodward Academy in the Atlanta area. Mario Cristobal went and saw him at the end of January. He's one of their favorite defensive backs. He talked about how he loves the energy Coach Cristobal and the staff are bringing, says they're building something special at Miami. He wants to see it up close, see how they develop their players, likes the culture. He wants to get a feel for the campus. He couldn't wait to get there. Miami, obviously one of Blake Stewart's favorites.
Who else is expected to visit the Canes for the start of camp today?
Well, a couple more key 2026 targets. We could talk all day about the 2027s. You're going to have to go to On3 and Cane Sport to learn more about those rising juniors. But in this rising senior class, 4-star offensive lineman Ben Congdon from Ohio coming into the visit. I already had predicted to Miami on the On3 RPM. I couldn't love that prediction more. I think Miami is clearly the number 1 program for the Tuscarawas Valley standout. He visited in January, back here in March, has an official visit set for June. Between Cristobal, Maribel, the program, how much they prioritized him. Miami is the favorite for Ben Congdon. Javian Mallory is another that myself and Chad Simmons logged in on 3 RPM in favor for over the weekend, a 4-star running back from in-state. Miami's in the mix for a lot of talented running backs this cycle. Javian Mallory's one of them. If he were to commit today, I think he would be a Hurricane. Karan Maycock is a linebacker. He recently committed to Florida State. He's out of Miami Central. The Hurricanes aren't going away on any talented players from South Florida committed elsewhere. Obviously, Maycock still keeping some schools warm, including Miami.
All right,
Jordan Campbell there today, too. Blue chip linebacker, committed to Miami, Nebraska, Mizzou, other programs trying to change that. Talked to a source on Sunday that said it is going to be very hard to flip Jordan Campbell from Miami. And Jordan Campbell himself has said as much in numerous interviews.
All right, Cane fans, talk to Steve and I. How are you feeling about 5-star wide receiver Tristan Keys? This is a huge visit. You think Miami lands him? Let us know. All right, let's talk a little Jared Curtis. We got some news on the number 1 quarterback in the country. Steve, take us inside this 2-team battle for the 5-star. We know it's Georgia. We know it's Oregon. But the news is there's been some extra visits scheduled.
Yeah, we talked about Jared Curtis on last week's Wiltfong Whiparound and about would his recruitment make it to the official visits in June. And I said I would not be surprised if he made his decision sooner. So Curtis is going to take these last two visits, go out to Oregon one more time with his family. He is obviously very comfortable with the Ducks and Coach Will Stein, that offense, Coach Landing, the trajectory of the program. Then get back to Georgia one more time on March 13th, spend a little more time around the program, the guys committed, players on the team. And then I wouldn't be surprised if he sits down with his family, his agent, and makes that final decision between Georgia and Oregon and starts helping recruit for his next football team.
So you think it could be before the official visits happen?
I do. I wouldn't be. I think Jared Curtis takes one official to the school he's committed to, but he has them both scheduled right now.
Right.
So hey, look, there's a chance that he could take these two visits and it could cloudy him up even more. We'll see what happens. I would give the edge to Oregon going into these spring visits.
Okay, so we'll see what happens coming out of the spring visits. I'll ask you again, but until then, you guys tell us, where do you think the number one quarterback is going to land? Who knows? You guys might. We got a new leader for offensive tackle, Emmanuel Iheanacho. He's the number 2 rated offensive tackle, the number 2 best player overall. And Steve, Oregon was out front, but now it's Maryland. What happened?
Well, I think the more he thinks about his process, the more he thinks about staying home for college. He said that actually started with Malik Washington, 4-star quarterback in the 2025 class, signing with Maryland, staying home. Then Zion Ely committing to Maryland, the number 1 edge rusher in the country, being in the fold for the Terrapins, the hometown hero. He said he's dreamed once about a Big Ten championship coming to Maryland, being a big part of that, 40 minutes away. His mom doesn't like flying. And just the relationship with Coach Loxley and the staff. He's camped at Maryland. He's been on their radar for 3 years. He's going to visit Maryland this coming weekend. He's going to come back for a couple spring practices. But there's just a lot of excitement around the program. Malik Washington being a big part of that. Zion Ely playing with a lot of guys that he knows from the area. Maryland is setting the pace in this recruitment, and it's obvious that they cannot be discounted. There's a lot of local talent looking at Maryland right now. Zion Ely and Emmanuel Iheanacho leading that charge and that movement right now. He may visit Oregon next weekend, though, so Oregon's still very much alive. Georgia, Penn State's on the itinerary for an official visit. Alabama, Tennessee, Miami. He's got a top 11, so it's not like he's not down to a top 2 like Jared Curtis, but Maryland is leading the charge right now. Oregon 2, and we'll see what happens from there.
But Iheanacho's not the only one that is also high on Maryland. What else do the Terps have going on right now?
Well, the number 4 safety in the country, number 3 player in the state, Jaira Edwards, he has his official visit locked in with Maryland. Programs like Auburn, Texas A&M, Oregon, a few other front runners for Jaira Edwards, but he too talked about playing in his own backyard. His teammate is Zion Ely. He even talked about Manny Iheanacho's interest and love for Maryland, and that would be something he would like to be part of. Said Maryland does a good job of recruiting their hometown players, and he talked about the DBs that they send to the league year in and year out. Kerry Adams is the number 4 cornerback in the country. He's out of the DMV. Penn State's his leader, but Maryland's right there. Oregon, USC, Notre Dame, Michigan, some of the others that he's high on. Maryland, they're in it for the Gonzaga, Washington, D.C. Gonzaga defensive ends. Carter Meadows, recently minted 5-star. Edge rusher Tyson Harley. They were the second program to offer Tyson Harley. He spoke highly of the Terrapins today. Zahir Cobb is a safety from Washington, D.C. He's going to take his official to Maryland June 13th. Hakeem Satterwhite, another one out of St. Francis. He's going to be part of that humongous official visit weekend at the end of June that will also include Iheanacho. But Satterwhite's got a top 10. Maryland's closer to the top of that list. 4-star receiver Connor Salmon. Mike Loxley went and visited him. Maryland's on his short list. You got Clemson, Penn State, Notre Dame, Virginia in there as well for Connor Salmon.
We got some new predictions. Who doesn't love a good prediction from Steve Wiltfong? You got 3 of them in the last 48 hours. So let's start with cornerback Devon Benjamin to the Oregon Ducks. What's behind this one, Steve?
Number 2 corner in the country per On3, number 4 corner in the land per the On3 industry. He is looking at Oregon, USC, Miami, North Carolina, Michigan, and Washington. But the intel says the Ducks are setting the pace right now. So with that, my On3 RPM reflects that the way Dan Lanning wants to play defense, the secondary is incredibly important. At the top of the show, we talked about Michigan and offensive line recruiting. Oregon and defensive back recruiting year in and year out is going to be very important. Devon Benjamin is one of their top targets, regardless of position. He feels that, and I think Oregon is setting the pace in that recruitment. My On3 RPM reflects that. Keep an eye on USC and others moving forward. As you know as well as I do, a lot of these recruitments are fluid.
Absolutely. You got wide receiver Naeem Burrows trending to UF with your latest prediction. Tell us about it.
Yeah, number 7 receiver in the country per the On3 industry. We are higher at On3. He is the number 2 wideout in the country. Florida put together one of the special receiver classes in 2025. There is a standard in that room. Naeem Burrows certainly meets that. He is a guy that would come in and push those guys and be hard to keep off the field in year 1. The intel at the Under Armour game in January favored Michigan. It favored Florida. It continues to favor the Gators right now. Clemson, USC, Texas, 3 others that he is high on. But coming into the next wave of visits, I think Florida is setting the tone for Naeem Burrows.
All right. New prediction for elite running back Javian Mallory to Miami.
Yeah, Miami is in the lead group for a lot of running backs right now. Javian Mallory out of Boca Raton, back on campus today for Miami's first spring practice of the year. The intel has favored Miami for a while in this recruitment. And so with that, my On3 RPM favors the Hurricanes. Miami pushing for a top 10 class in 2026. Looks like they're going to hit big at running back, regardless of who that is. I think Mallory, if he was deciding today, he would end up in the fold for the Hurricanes. And that will do it for today's episode of the Wiltfong Whiparound. Thanks for tuning in. Please hit like and subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel so you get alerts on the best in recruiting information in the country, from the Inside Scoop with Josh Newberg to the Wiltfong Whiparound. We will be back on Thursday for the next episode of the Wiltfong Whiparound. Thanks for tuning in.